Hello class, sorry I couldn't be with you today. I am currently at a track meet running very fast. But anyway, let's get my presentation. John Wilkes, he was a very important person in British history. Why? Well, because he was arguably the most pivotal force in the civil rights movement during his time. Why was he? Well, he challenged the authority of Parliament and the monarchy on an unprecedented scale that no one had ever done before. This included that he demanded the legislators, politicians, and the monarchs take responsibility for their obligations. What did that specifically look like? Well, he advocated for the full representation for the people and universal manhood suffrage. Like Rousseau, Thomas Hobbes, and John Locke before him, he searched and promoted an ideal system of social reciprocity where every individual, as long as they did not harm others in the process, had the right to live how they desired. So, what exactly differentiated him from his predecessors? Well, unlike these crusaders before him who championed liberty, Wilkes excluded any underlying association of religion, tradition, mores, identity, or culture. The law, as he saw it, was supposed to implement exactly what it constituted. Wilkes himself lived by this practicality regarding only his freedom in society and how it safeguarded him against those who tried to impinge his natural and civil rights. He was regarded as a symbolic figure because of the built-up and suppressed movement he channeled throughout his life. He believed the common man was entitled to certain rights and conditions just because he was human. Wilkes protested and actively repaired the relationship between the ruler and the ruled during his time, even though it got worse. It ultimately, long-term, would come to no democracy as we understand it today. Well, during a period where the mentality amongst the right wing, the monarchy, Tories, aristocrats, and the landed elite was to restore the traditional organic feudal system through agrarian culture, there was a growing movement for natural and civil rights that kicked back against this. The people looked for an outlet to foster this liberty, and Wilkes was the one who found them. They were especially trying to get away from the symbols of the past, including the tyrannical associations of Jacobitism, French relations, Scottishness, and Catholicism, which Wilkes portrayed in the monarchy and his opponents in Parliament through his publications, as we'll see. Slide number 3. Wilkes was elected MP of Aylesbury on July 6, 1757. He entered Parliament under the premiership of William Pitt, who he was also a part of his faction, so he supported him. And Pitt ultimately supported the common people. He attacked the lack of representation in the time period, and he led Britain throughout the 7 Years' War, allowing no concessions to France under his rule. Wilkes was part of the... well, sorry about that. They both wanted to change the political corruption amongst Westminster and the monarchy. This included rotten boroughs, bribery, MPs who were the only ones who made appointments in positions of the church. George III's appointment of Bute was very troubling to most people at the time because he was a 3-year tutor of George III before he became king, so most people automatically viewed him as a prime minister who got in just because of his association with the king. He was also directly related to the Stuart dynasty. So he had Scottish lineage, which made him increasingly unpopular. Along with other figures such as John Montagu, the Earl of Sandwich, and Henry Fox, who was the appointed leader by George III of the House of Commons, represented a coalition of power-driven aristocrats who used political connivery to sustain their positions of government. Through publications, this is slide number 4, through Wilkes's publications, he became the leading critic of Bute and George III in Parliament. On June 1762, the North Briton was created initially to counteract Bute's newspaper, the Breton. In the North Breton, Wilkes aligned Bute and the monarchy with Jacobitism, Catholicism, Frenchism, and Scottishness. He also used the paper to advocate for Pitt-style government. Second. It was through the North Breton that, the first issue of the North Breton offered a thoughtful defense of free speech, while the second issue portrayed an ironic celebration of Bute's new position. Number 3 devalued Scottish clans, and after the first 25 publications of the North Breton, arrest warrants and charges were issued against the writers. Nonetheless, Wilkes issued a brave defense in number 26. He said, "The public may rest assured that whilst the North Breton is actuated with affection and fidelity for its king, with love for his country, and is directed by those principles which naturally fall in our excellent Constitution, he will never tamely give up his glorious cause." The North Breton galvanized the public support so effectively, Wilkes was bribed with lordship over Canada, and then as a director of East India to stop publications. Bute deceptively used Henry Fox to try to gain the vote for the Paris Peace Treaty, which would end the 7 Years, ended the 7 Years' War. Bute, using the event to attack, Wilkes, using the event to attack Bute, issued in number 38 a letter of adoration from the Pope to Bute to thank him for his received Jacobite Stuart dynasty effort. Then in number 42, Wilkes exploited the new loan, which was a $3.5 million loan to Westminster from wealthy friends of the ministry with a huge interest rate that many of the common people did not know about. Number 43 exposed the mismanagement of government funds, and number 44 de-emphasized Bute's contributions. The climax was number 45, which was a devastating attack on the ministerial statements of the King's speech after for the peace treaty. For the first time ever, Bute publicly attacked the monarchy. Allegations were charged against him, and he was sent to the King's Bench prison because of these. But on May 6th, he was discharged from the court case on account of infringement of parliamentary privilege. The exemption from incarceration symbolized the common man's empowerment through freedom of speech. An estimated 10,000 supporters of Wilkes relished the hero's exit from Westminster, chanting "Wilkes and liberty." Yes. With that, though, allegations continued to build upon him, especially upon the findings of the Essay of Women, which was one of his works in progress at the time. This Essay of Women was essentially a public attack on the adultery of his public enemies, which was very explicit. Slide number 5. Slide number 5 basically shows that he won his court case. The people are chanting "Wilkes and liberty," delivering him out of the court procession. Slide number 6. In 1768, he returned to Britain, and he gained widespread political support throughout London and the state. In a drastic move, however, amongst his building support, he turned himself in to Parliament and was incarcerated. This triggered a massive movement throughout the low and middle class of London to assemble outside of the jailing facility in what came to be known as St. George's Massacre. There were ultimately 10,000 radical protesters there, and at the end of the day, 11 were killed because the commotion commotion erupted at such a high level. After this crucial event, however, Wilkes began to gain major support in Parliament. Some of this big portion of this support came from Edmund Burke and the anonymous writer Junius, who wrote a popular newspaper in London. Wilkes at the time fostered the perfect political climate to return to. Bad economic conditions, tensions with the American colony, and growing discontent among British people. Slide number 7. In the 7 Years' War, Wilkes had supported Pitt's no-toleration policy towards the French. 1 second. It was throughout the Revolutionary War that the Pitt and Wilkes coalition sustained a formidable opposition to the war effort, making it increasingly unpopular and fragmenting political cooperation for the war. On March 21st, Wilkes configured a bill for equal representation for the people in England. Wilkes and Pitt then assembled a movement to repeal the regulations imposed on America since 1763. Honestly, it would have been a reasonable policy that may have repaired relations if it had been passed in 1776, but the Treaty of France and America solidified the colony's claim for independence. So, near the end of 1779, the opposition in Parliament started utilizing the methods of Wilkes to repeal the war. Petitions came through Parliament, demands for economic reform spread contagiously. Associations and committees were set up, and the monarchy was continually denounced. The movement climaxed in 1780 when 18 members in Parliament, spurred on by Burke, advocated for the monarchy to decrease in power. The eruption of the Gordon riots that crippled the monarchy's legitimacy also came through. The situation only turned worse after that. The declaration of war on Holland isolated Britain, and the British Army's losses increased the war's unpopularity. On March 20th, 1782, there was motion in Parliament towards peace rejected by only 1 vote. By then, Westminster evidently regarded peace no longer as an option, but as an inevitable conclusion of the war, along with political and economic reform Wilkes had planned out. After that, for the next 20 years, Wilkes receded from the climax that was the climax of his political career. He died in December 26, 1797. But it's important to remember Wilkes as a central figure who fostered the progressive movement in an extremely ripe condition Britain had undergone. There was at the time a tyrannical monarch, a corrupt government, bad economic and political conditions. A huge portion of British society felt discontent and disassociated from government affairs also. Through his political positions, fame, adherence to practically followed laws, and his politically satirical publications, he used the leverage of his huge support base to pressure libertine conditions in government. His role was crucial for the understanding of democracy we acknowledge today. Thanks. That's it.